Hey, what's up, everybody? It's Sonny here, coming at you with a new edition of the Keeper's Corner. And we're going to be looking at our second hero feature today. If you guys did not check out the first hero feature on the Monk, make sure you go ahead and check that one out. It is a very important video, in my opinion, to make sure you have a brief look at if you're one of those lower level keepers that is on their way up. You definitely want to make sure you're aware of the highlights of the Monk and later tier brackets and things like that to make sure you prepare for them. But today we're going to be looking at the Druid. And the Druid, being a healer, of course, does have synergy with just about every hero in the game because of her Invigor and things like that. However, we're going to look at a few specific builds for her using different items, different epics, things like that. And firstly, what we're going to look at is her staff. Now, traditionally, I personally use the Rod of Ruin for the double element damage on it. It does absolutely help to make Entangle and Cyclone hit a lot harder, but it also makes Cyclone in particular a very great skill for gaining soul energy. And that's one thing you always want to keep in mind with your healers, is that heal abilities typically don't gain you any soul energy at all. And Righteous Call on the Cleric with the Ambusher's Hacker is a very great source of soul energy. And additionally, the Cyclone with the Rod of Ruin here is a very great source of soul energy. And now, I personally don't have one because I don't choose to use it. However, there is a great number of players who stick with the Nature's Offering here. And the reason for that being, of course, is the 15% magic resistance, which combines very, very well with the magic resistance on the Wyrmhide, the high defense rating, and the additional 4% armor. And we'll go ahead and have a look here at the Wyrmhide to see how those combinations really stack up. And when you look, the additional armor percent puts the Wyrmhide up to about 20% armor, which really puts it on par with a lot of plate or chainmail armors. And the 15% magic resistance boost puts you up to about 40% magic resistance. Now, of course, when you combine that with the Cleric or the Mystic, you're going to get some very, very high magic resistance totals. And, of course, there are a number of different skill setups available for the Druid, which is another thing that makes her a very, very powerful hero, and one of the better support and utility heroes in the game. Now, of course, the premier ability here on the Druid, in a lot of people's opinion, especially when it comes to PvP and hero battles, is Invigor. Invigor, of course, is a base heal, but the biggest part here is the skill cooldown reduction. And at a 50% plus reduction, Invigor is a huge source of cooldown reduction. And one of the tricks with Invigor is, for one, it will typically, because it's a heal, only target on enemies missing health. If all of your allies are at full health, it will random target. So you really need to be mindful of how you're getting your damage distributed from your opponents and where you're placing those Invigors. For example, sometimes there's merit to putting an Invigor on your healer, your tank, your DPS, depending on what skills you're going to need immediately and what things you can choose to wait for. The other skill here, which is one I personally don't use very often, but it is very, very, very much worth considering, is the Renewal. Renewal is quite possibly the largest heal in the game at 56 to 94 ticks, 11 times. 12 times at max skill, I want to say. So that, of course, is a little bit over 1,000 damage healed. And Entangle is another very, very important skill for the Druid. Other than the Berserker, rather, this is one of the only slow target skills in the game that will slow the opponent's skill cooldown. This is tremendously useful in tower attacks where opponents are using chill towers. It is very, very useful in PvP and hero battles where opponents are using fast cycle heroes like the Shaman. And it's also very valuable against the Wizard, where you're facing that huge damage output of the Wizard. It really helps to slow him down a bit. Healing Circle is a AoE party heal. Because of the long cooldown and the low value, I personally would not suggest using this. If you're looking for a party heal, I would certainly look towards the Cleric with her Righteous Call. And, of course, Cyclone, which we mentioned briefly, and its synergy with the Rod of Ruin. Now, one thing to keep in mind with Cyclone and Entangle when you are using that Rod of Ruin is that the Wrath of Nature here does not boost the elemental damage on those elemental weapons. It only boosts the base damage of Cyclone and Entangle. And because their base damage is so low, I really would typically suggest to avoid this skill. adding this passive skill will net you a couple extra points of soul energy on those Cyclone and Entangle uses. But mostly you're really going to want the bonus healing and the bonus defense. Unlike the Cleric, whose bonus healing is really not terribly useful, the Druid relies mostly on heal over time spells. So that additional 36 or 38 or 40 healing on your renewal, your rapid regeneration, things like that, is going to become very, very, very valuable later in the game. And, of course, her rapid regeneration is her soul skill. This, of course, goes up with each star level to the point that at 7 stars, it is one of the most potent heals and best soul skills in the game. It is very, very difficult to outdamage a combination of a 7-star rapid regeneration and renewal. Unless you can dispel it with a spell sword, it's going to be very difficult. And now the Druid is the first of our hero features here that does have skins available as well. As you can see, there are the Danya and Renewal Dreamweaver skins for the Druid. So if you want to make her look a little fancy, you can absolutely check those out. And we'll go ahead and jump into a couple different scenarios here where the Druid is very useful. We did, of course, see her in action in our Monk feature video here in the Wizards Chosen. But we're going to go ahead and switch that group up just a little bit by adding the Necromancer. We'll move the Knight over here just to stray away from focusing on that Monk team for a moment. With the Barbarian here, because I do only have one Wyrmhide at the moment, I'm going to give her the Max Vest of the Flayer. We'll go ahead and throw the Aetheron Robes and the Dark Defender onto the Necromancer. However, I usually prefer the cooldown reduction for him. I have been doing some experimenting with that character, which we'll cover in another feature video here. Apologies, I have to clear out these guild marks really quickly. And don't mind these other team setups. We're not going to go ahead and progress past the first battle anyhow. Now, of course, the sources of soul stones for the Druid are typically going to be find loot. Because she is a rare hero, you still have a moderately decent find loot chance with her. The soul stone or the hero shop, purchasing soul stones with gold is very important for her because they are a lower cost soul stone starting at 5,000 gold. I usually would suggest picking up 3, maybe 4 soul stones for your rare heroes, and your typical focus for those early on is going to be the Druid, the Barbarian, the Spell Sword, the Samurai, pretty much all of them except for the Swashbuckler. Although the Swashbuckler does have some value, it's got some pretty niche uses and has to be placed with very specific teams to be effective. So we really want to focus on our more universally viable heroes and those that don't require nearly as much. Now, one of the things you'll notice here is that using the Druid with a taunt, as I am, really forces you to set your Invigors on that frontline taunter. And there are going to be instances where that is not what you want to do. The best use of the Druid is typically going to be with a wing taunt and a DPS frontline like the Ranger or the Monk, where you're at least spreading damage to 2, if not 3 heroes because of the line damage. And in that situation, with the Monk, the Samurai, the Druid, and the Barbarian here, that does allow you the ability to put your Invigor on either the Samurai, the Monk, the Druid at any time. Choose which one of those 3 you're going to want to operate with. And that's going to allow you to either increase your damage output from the Kai Shout, Kai Strike, increase your ability and speed on putting up those wing taunts, things like that. But in this typical setup with the backline Druid behind the Knight, it does allow her to take some damage and Invigor herself, which, especially when you're outnumbering your opponent, whether it be 4 on 3, 3 on 2, 2 on 1, having those extra cycles on the Druid of additional Invigors, Entangles, and Cyclones is really going to help gain the advantage over the team that you're facing. Because not only do you outnumber them, you're now gaining more speed while slowing them down, which increases your skill cycle. And as we've covered many times before, anytime you can get off more skills than your opponent, you're typically going to be in very good shape. So as you can see, the Druid really does have a lot of value across the board. We'll go ahead and check her out here in the tower battles as well. And this is a fairly difficult tower, so it'll be a good example of how valuable she can really be. We're going to go ahead into this one with the Tank Mage up front. This is a new build I've been working on in tower attacks, which we will cover in another video. I don't want to stray too far off focus here. However, the idea with this setup, of course, is the 2 DPS heroes as opposed to 1 will help us to kill some of those stall floors and things like that, but also to progress past chill towers. One of the problems with running only the Archmage as your source of DPS is that his cycle is so incredibly slow. It does become very, very difficult in terms of getting out that DPS as you need it and when you need it, instead of just waiting for a Meteor Swarm. With this build here, we're able to use the Shadow Sensor, the Ball of Darkness, the Demon Fire for additional soul skill and damage output. One thing to be mindful of and to absolutely note is that the Ball of Darkness is an undodgeable skill. So there are a few AoEs out there like the Cavalier, the Kensai, the Warlock, where their AoE skills are not able to be dodged. So that's going to really help out in terms of floors filled with demons, things like that. High dodge heroes that are defending. So you definitely want to be mindful of that when you're trying out this build here with the 2 DPS heroes. And it, of course, doesn't always work. It does require a little bit higher of a gear base. As you can see, I'm not running an additional Aetheron robes on my Warlock. I usually like to go with the Vicious Vestments in the meantime until I get an additional Aetheron to wear on her. However, you do see I have the epic armor and weapon across the board on my other heroes here. But this definitely makes towers go not only a lot faster, but a lot smoother in a lot of situations. There will be times when either the Warlock or the Archmage will die. But one of the very valuable uses of the Druid in this party, of course, is her rapid regeneration. That is going to give us an on-demand heal for whenever we need to pick up that health total of our Warlock or our Archmage to prevent their deaths, things like that. And of course, Invigor is going to help speed up the Archmage's skill cycle quite a bit here. And again, Cyclone is acting as a pretty good source of soul generation, or soul energy generation, even without the Rod of Ruin. Of course, if you do have a second Rod of Ruin that you could wear on her while pursuing these tower attacks, it's only going to make things easier and faster for you. And of course, you do want to still consider that Nature's Offering for the defensive properties. And we'll go ahead and finish out this tower here. Now, of course, there is something to be said for combining both of your healers into one team in earlier PvP brackets. It can certainly cause some trouble for opponents that don't have enough DPS to work through your tank while they're taking heals from 2 sources. However, in order to do so, you really have to be sure that your other teams can survive without a healer. And part of that comes with simply out DPSing your opponent, but you always want to make sure that your teams are at least spread between 2 groups. You really don't want to overly focus on one group, and you don't always have to focus on 3 groups. There is something to be said for having 1 super-powered team and 2 okay teams. However, I personally prefer to keep 2 good to great teams and 1 meh okay team. And as you progress through the game and get more stars, more gear, that's going to change for everybody based on what they have and what they can put together. But for now, the Druid is certainly a upper to high tier hero that I would suggest everybody focus on her soul stars as soon as possible. From the moment you unlock her, you want to be focusing on find loot. You want to be focusing on the hero shop. Because she is a rare hero, unlike the monk, there is some merit to using her in heroic missions and even in tower rewards. She, of course, can be a component in stall floors at earlier levels, which would be 4 or 5 suits of arms, and the Druid there to heal and rapid regeneration on those guys. And as you can see here in my tower, I personally have her sitting on my top floor just in case anyone gets up there. She will help to stall them out, especially if they'd lost a hero or two on the way up. Anyhow, that is our second hero feature on the Druid here. There will be some more information in the description on here, so make sure you check that out. If you haven't come over to join us on Discord yet, make sure you head to the towerkeepershq.com website. They'll direct you to the Tower Keepers Discord server there, where you can join all of us other keepers for more helpful strategy and tips and tricks, things like that. Make sure if you guys enjoyed this one to hit the like button and drop any comments below for any heroes you'd like to see featured, or even any individual skills or epic items, armor, weapons, things like that. Let me know what you want to see, and I'll make sure I'll get that stuff out there. And make sure you subscribe to this channel so you can catch all of our updates as they come out. And once again, we thank you guys very much for watching the Keeper's Corner, and we will catch you on the next one.